Hello everybody, in this video I want to share with you some insights and tips if you are developing a VR game, some recommendation how to make it better. So basically here what you're going to see me is actually playing Physics Playground. This is kind of a experimental tech demo for full body player physics and physics interaction system, including simulated weight and collision. But for me what was important is actually to try this type of simulation applications in VR to actually try to imagine how a game in first-person shooter can be like a good one, and what type of first-person shooter experience, a unique one, we can create that will actually be interesting and fun to play in virtual reality. So I actually spent quite a lot of time in this, and I want to share my experience. Now, the most important thing, of course, when you start playing the game is sometimes you prefer playing seated or standing postures. And of course this is because we need to give players the option to do this, because either they have issues, they can't even stand for any reason, they don't want to, they're unable to, for any reason we need to give them these options so they can play whatever posture they like. So again, this is a must in my opinion, and let's move on. Now this is also a must in my opinion, being able to remotely interact with objects in the 3D world, in the virtual world. By that I mean, instead of players needing to maybe crouch and grab something, or kind of travel to a certain location, just give them the option to just remotely grab them, just aim and press some button or one of the buttons on the controller to actually grab items from far away. This is very convenient to do in virtual reality and doesn't require the player to actually crouch or change posture in order to get items. So you can see this implemented in this demo, and it works very well. Now when it comes to weapon angling, it's up to you to decide. You can make it more complicated and realistic, or simplify it to make it very easy. It's up to you. The thing is that I think that many games will actually benefit from a more simplified handling, although actually having realistic one is actually nice. But the thing is that it takes some time. It's in VR, sometimes not everything is perfect with the movement where you position your hand. So, for example, just grabbing the magazine, you can make it completely automatic. All right, just when you are off, you just do a delay, and the magazine just animated towards your weapon, and players can continue shooting. Or you can just go with a full realistic one, where you need to actually grab the magazine from your chest, put it in, reload. And of course, many players love the realistic. Depends on your game, but consider also a simplified version. If you want to make it easier for players, if you have more advanced mechanics in the game. So just don't make everything so complicated, because you're going to have so many mechanics. Just simplify the weapon mechanics, make it more simple, and then you can combine other things to make the game kind of the fluent of the gameplay. The gameplay more fluent if you have more mechanics. Not just the one related to guns, or maybe some slow motion and other stuff, so players don't need to deal with everything all together at the same time. Now regarding movement, usually you see games, they give you options. You can have, for example, free movement, teleportation. Give users the option, as long as it doesn't break the game. For example, if there's teleportation, you can actually blink to another place and actually can fool enemies. So again, it depends on the game, of course, but it's important to give options for a main reason, because some people actually suffer from motion sickness when you give them free movement. I mean free movement only. So it's important, and this is very important, because otherwise player will just will leave and not play the game. So giving those options is very important, and try to work around this by creating a game that the teleportation won't actually break the gameplay, and give advantage for some players to use different movement options. Now when it comes to weapon accuracy, I've seen so many kind of really catastrophic ways that the developers are actually making. Some of them make it amazingly well. So basically the game, if you aim towards a certain location, it needs to be accurate. In this game, for example, there are some situations where the bullets are kind of deviating from the center. So it happens that I'm aiming to the headshots, I'm very accurate, and actually miss the target. And this is not good. Basically, we don't have aim assist here in VR, right? We are actually aiming, and our aim need to be kind of very steady. So this is enough kind of a challenge in actually making sure that we are properly positioning things, and while actually enemies are actually moving around. So make sure that if you're already making adjustment for this, make sure when I aim at a single target, it will hit the target. rather than hit somewhere else. And this can be very, very annoying. In this game, it actually was very annoying. And the thing is that it is done sometimes to balance so weapons won't be too accurate, so players can actually miss shots. But this is not the way to do it. You need to balance it in the other way around. Allow kind of a balancing when it comes to being able to avoid getting hit, or maybe your HP, but something that allows players to kind of not die too fast, but not actually doing something that allows the bullets to just hit different areas where the player is actually aiming at. You can even add more complex or delay to the loading system, loading mechanics. So if the player is actually missing some shots, they need to reload again. It can take time. So kind of punish them if they actually miss, but don't do it when it comes to the accuracy of the bullets. Now the same goes to recoil. I've seen this in many games, even here. It's absolutely silly to look at and actually feel it when you're just shooting, for example, with one hand and the gun just goes up, I don't know, like 50 degrees up. It's just silly and it just doesn't work well. So if you are making recoil, you can do something like this. You see, kind of subtle, that if it doesn't, because if not, it just doesn't feel immersive enough, because the weapon just go up and you're actually feeling that you are holding it straight and just go up so much. So make sure you kind of balance it right. So if you do add recoil, add something subtle, not too intrusive, so it actually breaks the immersion of the game. Now the level design is one of the most important thing to think about when designing a first-person shooter. You need ahead of time to know what type of gameplay you want to play. For example, to create. For example, if you want a tactical shooter, you probably want to have lots of cover for players, and this actually complement well different type of gun mechanics. For example, if you need to reload and put a magazine in, reload and manage yourself in a realistic shooter, sometimes it's nice that you can actually give it time to do this, so it's not too fast and it can get too chaotic and you just find yourself in front of players just reloading, and then this is kind of silly. I once played even a zombie shooter where I'm stationary in one place and need to fight against wave of enemies, and just the weapon handling, everything was so slow. Even if I actually mastered it well, it was so slow that I was overrun by enemies so fast. It just felt terrible. And the fact that enemies can actually reach me at close range, and it was just a terrible experience. So again, even if you're good in handling the weapon, you need to make things that work pretty fast, and so focus more on the action rather than getting the mechanics of the reloading mechanics slow to execute by the player. I try other games where, for example, I needed to reach to grab my magazine for my body. Sometimes it's not even self-explanatory, so maybe it's for the first time try to explain players, but sometimes I just couldn't reach it. It's just far away because the chest 3D model was not in the right position. It was just terrible. And the other thing is that I wanted to reload, and sometimes when I try to reload, if there is a hand 3D model, something just wrapped around the gun and something doesn't work. It's very important to make it very simple, very intuitive, and fast for players to execute in the game. Now, in first-person shooter games, I love shooting from the hip, but in this game it was actually terrible. The problem was that the recoil was too high, and of course there's no something that allows you to aim properly here. Sometimes maybe it's nice to give players the option to get a gadget, maybe a laser, that can actually help them aiming, because again, aiming from the hip without actually something that helps you out in terms of location can be a bit difficult. But maybe adding some kind of a laser sight, we can actually just aim and see the laser actually hitting something, and you can better aim while hip firing. Now when it comes to melee weapons, I want to see things happen immediately. I don't want to get stuck with something. When I lower my hand, the sword actually just gets stuck. It just ruins the immersion, because I just act differently than I expect it to be when I'm actually doing this motion. For example, just moving the katana and slicing down enemies. So I think the best thing is just not to make the sword stuck, for example, on the rigid body. Just make sure it slides in and deal damage. So this kind of some kind of damage animation, rather than making it kind of stuck and do nothing. not do nothing. I mean, we're just dealing damage, because again, it needs to be continuous, the same way your hands is actually moving in the real world, rather than get stuck at something and your hands are actually just continue moving down, or maybe the sword is just facing upwards, where you don't actually expect it to be like that, the way you actually using your hands by holding the controller. And of course, there's a problem sometimes when you want things to be very realistic. And this is, by the way, I love the more fantasy style games where you can actually play around with things that doesn't need to be very realistic. For example, if I take a hammer and I hit something, well, I probably, and it's supposed to be realistic, I expect it to just get stuck, right? And not just pass through something. But again, that's the problem, is that either you really, when you do this, the body of the player really reacts to this, so we just really move down and the player moves down with the hit. But again, you can do this. Again, it's all about balancing things. It's possible, but it's important to know that it's all about the developer trying to make sure that the movement of the melee weapon actually synchronize well with what the player is actually doing in the real world, the way they're holding the controller and the location of the controllers. Now, playing this simulation game, actually, when I tried the slow motion, this was actually incredible. But of course, when you play slow motion, these are just NPCs that I'm actually fighting. However, if you have a slow motion, maybe you can do something. For example, instead of slow motion everything, maybe just create kind of a circle where the players are inside the circle, they get to be slowed, and you can actually kind of, an effect, an ability in a game that actually slow them down, and then you can actually have this type of fighting mechanics in slow motion, bullet time, for both you and the real players you are actually fighting against. Again, the thing is, in virtual reality, I personally prefer just go wild, go with something doesn't have to be realistic, something that actually is just fun to play and interesting. So, for example, if I created a circle there, I can just go and release some shot, jump in the air slowly, and put those bullets in, and just imagine these are real players. That would be absolutely insane. And just sit and drop one after the other. Of course, you can balance it, just giving them maybe an option to have an item that cancels that. There are different options. Or maybe there's a timer where if you press it in time, you can actually cancel that ability of the other players who tries to attack you. Now, hit registration is something that is so important, and it happens to me so many times. Even if I play the older Halo games, non-VR game, it was there and it was absolutely annoying. I want to feel the impact of my shots, not just seeing kind of the animation of the, when I'm firing from the weapon, but actually feel the impact when a bullet actually hit enemies. It can be something that shows the damage numbers. It can be something kind of that change the an animation that changes something on the body, shows the impact. Maybe doing an animation for the entire body just pushes backwards when actually getting hit. So there's many ways to do this, but it's important. I want to feel that I'm actually hitting enemies, not just seeing kind of a splash animation from the weapon and actually not feeling that I'm hitting anything. And this is so important, and makes actually the gunplay so much more satisfying. For example, you can use ints. Even if I get hit, for example, by a bullet, it can push me a bit, just a bit, in the direction of the bullet. So actually, I can actually understand, and this is a cue for me, visual cue, where am I actually getting hit from. So it can be really nice. But again, just a bit, so I can feel like I'm getting hit. So it can work both ways. So if this is implemented, again, it can work very well and just create a more immersive gunplay experience. Here you can see that the awkwardness of using a sword. Again, as I told you, this is something that supposed to be realistic here, but just led to very awkward gameplay experience. Of course, there are tons of things I can talk about when it comes to making a great first-person shooter VR experience, sound effects, music, and other cool stuff. But the thing is that for this video, we're going to end this because I wanted to share things specifically that I discovered during actually playing this specific simulation game. And the thing is that I recommend, if you are a developer creating a first-person shooter virtual reality game, to actually try this one up. There's actually another version, by the way, a new version called Sport Mode. You can try it out via SideQuest. By the way, I'm playing this one on the Oculus Quest 2, and try it out, because again, trying this type of sandbox experiences, simulation experiences, really give you an idea what can work and what can not work, and you can design your game with these insights. For me, it was very obvious when I started playing this, and I discovered so many things that just worked well, and other ones that actually work so badly that if I were to design a game, I probably knew what not to do and what to do after experiencing these simulation apps myself. So this is it for this video. Hope you find this one insightful. Again, if I have more things to share regarding things based on my experience, I'm going to share them. But keep in mind, there are many other things that you can learn from. I'm just going to share things that I kind of try, experience something, and I'm going to share it immediately with you, so it's fresh, and you can know what can work, what not work. I mean, just be encouraged to try this yourself and find other things that I might even not found yet. So this is it for this video. I'll see you on the next one. Thanks for watching. Cheers. Bye bye.